are here for another session with me, Brandy Bollinger. I am a team engagement manager at the REC Foundation. My job is to support coaches, whether you are starting a new program, you are sustaining a program that's already been founded, or you're taking over an existing program. I'm here to help you learn how to be a more effective coach. So one of the things that I really want to concentrate on today is creating success through communication. So this is proven methods from coaches in the community. So part of my job at the REC Foundation is networking with coaches every single day. So these are some of the things that I have either experienced in the community talking with coaches, or me as a coach myself have used that have increased communication within my team. So here are the things that we're going to cover today. So we're going to talk about why communication is the key to success. What does success even look like? Setting communication standards. What do you expect of your students, your coaches, and your parents on your team with regard to communication? I'll give you some examples of communication services that other coaches in the community are using successfully, and then I'm going to help you create some event agendas that will increase the likelihood that your students know where to go, what to wear, where to be, when to be there, and what to do when they get there. All right, so what is success? Before you think about anything else, you need to think about what success looks like for your program. You as a coach on a team get to decide what that definition of success is. And the definition of success should look different for every team. Based on your resources, your time, your funding, your coaches, your students, your anything, your definition of success might look different. To one team, definition of success might be just to build a robot. It might be learning how to sync your controller with your brain. It might be going to your first event. It might be making it to the field every single match. Or you could be all the way up to, we're going to win the world championship. Anywhere in between. Success looks different. And even within an organization, success can look different for every single team within that organization. But all teams that are effective have clear expectations for their students, coaches, and parents. Now, I've also seen some teams that are successful and effective that don't do any of this, but that works for them. And again, going back to what does success look like for that? Then effective teams also maintain communication between their team members, so coaches and students, adult helpers, and parents. So parents that aren't helping the team but are there to support their students, and then they maintain those expectations. This quote is something that means a lot to me. This is actually my team's motto, which is when you win, say nothing. When you lose, say less. The idea behind this is that being successful, again, is something that you are looking for individually as your team. But we always want to remember to be humble in the process. So as you're going through these things, teaching your students, again, to follow the student-centered code of conduct and be respectful to their own teammates as well as to people in the community when you're reaching out as far as your communications go. All right, so why is communication the key to success? We talked a little bit earlier, if you watched my previous session, about how expectations can be met and exceeded once you set them for your students. So talking about this with regard to communication, both internal and external, these are the things that you really want to take into consideration to set as your expectations for communication. The contribution, okay? Teams are made up of people usually, who want to be there, right? They're students who love robotics, and they're there because they want to build robots, they want to drive robots, they want to program robots, they want to document robots, they want to play with robots. My kids like to scout robots too, so that's another thing. So for the most part, they want to do the things, but they don't know what things to do if they don't know who's supposed to be there, what they're going to be doing, when they're going to be there, why they're there, where they're going, and how they're going to get there. They can't be successful unless they know where things are happening and when they're happening. Being responsible for yourself is a learned skill. We as adults forget that children haven't learned how to be responsible for themselves yet. yet we expect them to be responsible. So teaching them responsibility is something that we should have in the forefront of our mind as coaches. Then consistency. If we really want someone to learn something, then we as the adults in charge need to become fair and consistent in maintaining the system that we expect of them. All right, so communication. I'm going to teach you a little bit about different methods that coaches use for communication, but these are the 3 things that you need to take into consideration. Number 1 is access, that a student or a parent or another coach can access these at any point in time, no matter where they are or what device they have, whether they're accessing it on maybe a school-issued Chromebook or a cell phone or a desktop computer at home. Knowing where they can access these from is important. Next is privacy. Protecting minors is very important. A lot of schools have use policies on what softwares students can and cannot have access to, and sometimes these programs also have regulations on who can and cannot use them. Next is thinking about things that are invitation only, something that requires some kind of authentication for you to extend an invitation to them. And then availability. Is it free for the people to use? Whether it's a cost that maybe your team is incurring, or you are just plain utilizing a free program. Finding it in one place. So for me, when we talk about team contracts, like I did earlier, I include all of the information about the systems that you need to subscribe to for communication in that team contract so parents know where they can go to find them. And then providing terms of use. Again, this goes back to the access and the privacy, that parents need to know what they're giving access to and what their students are going to be having access to. All right, so these are some of the things that are the challenges when it comes to communication. Number 1 is creating responsibility. Again, we forget that students don't know how to be responsible, especially when it comes to their digital citizenship. We have to teach them that. We have to set the expectation for them. 1 is learning to check without being prompted. I can guarantee you my son, who's in middle school, has checked his Discord with his friends 50 times today. But if I were to send him a text message, he'd be like, ugh, and then not look at it, right? So teaching your students that are on your team or your own children that it is good to be responsible and check the messages that you have to check, even if they aren't messages that you want to check. Keeping yourself informed without being prompted is a learned skill, and we as coaches need to teach that. Respond when required. I feel like kids nowadays, they see a message and they in their head go, yeah, but they never let anyone know that they saw it. So some of the communication methods that I will teach you about in a little bit, request, response. So like leave a reaction, leave a thumbs up, say yes, I saw this, whatever it is, to respond when required, and to look for solutions. This is teaching students how to use history of communications to find solutions to the problems that they have without asking the same question over and over and over again. Okay? Fun and function. All communication methods have the ability to be useful and fun, and sometimes we need to have both of those things. So in a lot of the communication methods that my team uses, we provide opportunities for both of those things in the same environment, because at that point I know my students are safe. So we always have an official business area and an off-topic area, because let's face it, kids are not going to stay on topic 100% of the time, and I don't expect them to. I just want to give them a place to be able to do both things. All right. Then we're going to create consistency. Again, these are some of the, I won't call them deltas, because, you know, while they are an opportunity for you to create change as an adult, there's not necessarily a negative connotation with these. These are just things that you need to keep into consideration when you're developing the expectations and executions of communications within your teams. One of the things that a lot of coaches talk to me about is the fact that they try to reach out to their teams and it's like crickets. And the idea is, kids, we're in a very fast-paced world nowadays, right? Students are very used to in-your-face, quick-coming information. TV, internet ads are something that happen very quick. So increasing your engagement with your students with regular content will keep them coming back. If you only post once a week, they don't have a reason to go on there and continue to look. So keeping posts frequent is good. Utilizing services to automate posts. Some of the services that I'll introduce you to in a little bit have the opportunity to utilize paid or free integrations that might have automatic posts or sync with tasks lists or other content, and then having dedicated posting for specific users. So I have some mentors on my team who manage certain channels or manage certain communications or manage certain duties and communicating those out. Then maintaining and enforcing policies. Community standards are so important. A lot of schools cover digital citizenship in their tech education classes nowadays, but extending those expectations of what they're learning in school into your team is a great bridge to close the gap there. And then maintaining user permissions. So making sure that your students have access to the information that they need, adults have access to the information that they need. So one of the communication tools that's very popular both in and out of industry is an application called Slack. So Slack, if you're familiar with it or unfamiliar with it, it is a channel-based chat service. So for all of us that grew up in the 90s, think like AOL Instant Messenger, but in a confined, closed space. For students, if they're familiar with Discord, it's kind of a professional version of Discord. It's a messaging and chat service. If you are an educator and you have an educator email address, there is a free educational version of this that you can set up as an administrator and then invite all of your parents and students to it, but it cannot be accessed by anyone who does not have an invitation. Slack's user agreement is 13 and over. So if you coach an IQ team, this may or may not be good for you for students, but it's great for parents with students, okay? And the kind of delta to go along with this is it kind of requires a bit of moderator maintenance. So you create topics or channels, and you keep discussion in those channels based on that topic. So you might have a build, a program, a notebook, whatever else channel, and you as the moderator are going to be the one ensuring that those channels are created and that the posts are appropriate and those kind of things. But there are a lot of integrations that you can use, like Google To-Do List. There's like one's called like Tasker. There's tons of different integrations that you as a coach can have your students using programs that integrate into Slack. I use this for work and for my own team. We've been using Slack since I think 2017, and it has been great for us. It has a lot of historical knowledge. The free version does have like after a certain amount of time posts get deleted, so you might lose some of that like super long historical knowledge. We pay for the paid educational license. It's $12 per year per user, so roughly $1 a month. I charge a $25 fee to be on my team, so that covers like your team t-shirt, a pair of safety glasses, a toolkit, and $12 for you to have a year-long membership of Slack. So that's something that you can think about doing if you want to, or maybe your school already has an educational license and you can just create an additional workspace in there for your students. I cannot emphasize enough the need for a random channel. A lot of mentors, when they create communication tools for their team, they think, I'm just going to cut this out. We're not going to have random. I'm not dealing with that. No. If you don't put it somewhere, the students will put it in your general chat or your specific chat, and you will end up with randomness everywhere. Just give them a place to do it and set the expectation for, if you shouldn't say it at school, you shouldn't say it in this chat, and call it good. You'll actually find some pretty funny things from your kids, you know, funny memes and stories and random pictures. We have like a photos channel, which is really great. So as parents are at events taking photos, or we're at team meetings building things, there's a photos channel. So we all have photos of each other because parents aren't always there to take pictures of their kids. So being able to have them is great. You can also create private channels. So if you want to have like a channel for just the grown-ups on your team, you can do that. If you want to have certain subsections have their own area, that is awesome too. I can't say enough good things about Slack. But I will be very open and honest with you. When my husband and co-coach came to me and said, hey, Brandy, we should do Slack for the team, I was like adamantly against this. I was like, this is one more thing that I cannot add to my plate today. This is one more thing that I'm going to have to manage that I don't have the bandwidth to manage. This is one more program that I need to learn how to do, and the mental load of all of that was too much for me. But I will tell you, like all these years later, it's one of the best things that we've ever done for our team. It has created such an open, collaborative environment for all of my students. It's given them a place for them to put their ideas when they have them. It has given them a voice, especially for those students who aren't the one in a room of other people who will speak up and say what they want to say because they're too shy. But when they're behind their keyboard, they have the opportunity to do that. It gives the students who might not have a ride to robotics every single day an opportunity to participate. It gives everybody on my team an equal voice and an equal opportunity to be a contributor to my team, and I cannot say enough about how great that is for creating a conducive learning environment for every student on my team. So it might be work, but it's worth it. All right, Remind. This is another one of those services a lot of people probably already use. A lot of schools use Remind. I think, Jared, you said that your school already uses Remind, and you were sending out messages to send your student contract through there. So it's free, it's easy. It does require you to have like a teacher who's in charge to do the majority of the posting, where Slack is a more collaborative workspace, right? Anybody can post, anybody can do the things. So Slack is probably better for two-way communication. I send something out, you respond to it, we have a discussion, we post resources, et cetera, where Remind, I think, is a little bit better as a one-way communication tool. And then a lot of schools already utilize this service, so in the list of schools in Remind, you can attach yourself to that school. Can I have?
Say, Brandy,
yeah.
Would it be possible to share your Slack account, like screen, like just what it looks like, so we could get a sense of, you know, the actual physical software and interface?
I can probably figure out how to do that, yes. So I'm on my work computer right now, so I only have my work Slack on my computer. But let me see if I can figure out, maybe at the break, how to log into my team's Slack from my computer, and yeah, through the browser.
For this group, it is going to be really limited because IQ tops out at 14, and you can't register for Slack till 13. Because I know that's one thing I start with kids in second grade on Teams. I start younger with my camps, and a lot of the apps that do this, you really have to watch those ages. But so
Yeah, and a lot
just
of
something to think about if you're watching this for IQ is you're going to have a very limited window at the top of that would be able to use Slack.
Yeah, for communicating with your students, definitely. For the IQ age, this would probably, Slack would, and even Remind, would be a more effective tool for maintaining communications with your parents, sending out documentations and agendas and those kind of things to your parents. Yeah, absolutely. Then the last one I want to talk about is Google. We're all familiar with Google. Yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
That's a great transition, because across the chat here, is Google Chat the same instead of Slack?
So again, that's going to depend on the permissions of your school. If your school or organization is a Google Suite school through Google Classroom, which we've integrated Google Classroom into our team, that's how I send out like a lot of stuff. Like my participant release form, I make it an assignment in Google Classroom and send it out to everybody, and then once they've completed it, they take a screenshot of their completion and upload it to the assignment in Google Classroom. So you can use a lot of cool Google things. There's Google Groups. Through your Google Classroom, there's a chat, like a Google Chat feature. And then Google Groups also has like the ability to send out emails while protecting people's privacy so that the students' email addresses are hidden, the parents' email addresses are hidden, but it also creates like a history of the emails that you've sent out. So if you get a new student that joined, you can add them to the group and they can see the whole history of the emails that you have sent out. That's usually pretty helpful. And then Google Calendar is really great for sending out like big picture things of like, go here on this day, do this thing at this place, right? So when it comes to kids, for the most part, you as a coach are going to be communicating with the parents, right? And then figuring out what your school or your organization that you're participating in allows for you with regard to communication with students is important. So, but I can probably almost guarantee you that even the elementary kids, they probably have a private Discord server where they're chatting with each other, and you don't want to touch that with the 10-foot pole. Yeah, so the comment over here was a Google Chat, if your students have access to Google Chat, is literally, it's a chat room. Like, it's, again, going back to like old school AOL Instant Messenger, it's literally a chat room where it's just one big giant conversation, just dump all. Where Slack is going to be divided by topic of conversation and maintaining those topics of conversation within there. So that's kind of like communication methods for two-way communication. The next topic, which I got a couple minutes to cover before we head to our lunch break, is event agendas. And the idea behind this method of communication is teaching your parents and your students and the other coaches on your team to be responsible for the who, what, when, where, why, how of what they're supposed to be doing by providing them all of that information in one comprehensive document that's available in a public place. On my team, I spend a long time creating these agendas. I include every piece of information that you could possibly ever want to know in one document. And if a student comes to me and say we're going to a 2-day event, we've got a travel day and then we've got the competition day, and a student comes to me and says, hey Brandy, what color shirt are we wearing on Thursday? I will not answer their question if the answer is in the agenda. I will tell them, read the agenda. If a mom emails me and says, hey Brandy, what time do I need to drop my child off for you guys to leave for the competition? I'm literally going to tell that parent, the answer to your question is in the agenda. I made a lot of enemies when I started doing this. Parents were like, why can't you just tell me? Why can't you just respect my time and read the document that I procured that has all of the information for you? They start reading the agenda when you start responding with, I'm not telling you the answer because you have the access to the answer, okay? And you got to have a little bit of tough skin to be committed to doing this. Like, you have to be okay getting yelled at by people in order to create this culture on your team or within your organization, right? And in line with like the REC student-centered policy, making this information available to students and having them advocate for themselves to their parents and to their coaches it's empowering, right? Like, these students are learning how to be responsible. They're learning how to be independent. And to me, that's part of the great thing about a student-centered environment, right? The parents aren't doing this for the students. The parents are learning how to be independent too. Because I will tell you, I have far, far, far more parents ask me questions that they could just read this document for than a student. My students know, go to this document, you will find the answer. Parents want the easy way out. So, the only thing is, you have to have a lot of time and energy to create these documents and maintain these documents. And You need to learn to be very clear and concise. It's a lot easier to say more than to say less, when in the actuality you want to say the most effective answer to a question with the least amount of words, so that people actually, it's attainable to read these. So the goal of this is anybody, anywhere, even you guys who are not on my team, should be able to pick up my event agenda and come to an event prepared. So that if a student who's never been on your team before is coming to their first event, they're not scared. If a parent who's just learning how to be a robot mom is bringing their kid to an event for the first time, she doesn't feel overwhelmed, okay? So they shouldn't have to ask you any questions that you don't answer with read the agenda, okay? So this is some of the things that throughout the robotics community, other coaches and then myself as a coach have identified as important things to include in an event agenda. And I will show you an example of what my team's agendas look like after this. So the idea with me being here as the REC Foundation to present this all to you guys today is, as your team engagement manager, I want you all to be better coaches. I want your teams to be more successful. I want your students to feel more empowered, and I want your parents to continue to encourage a student-centered environment. And by doing this, it helps you achieve that, right? So, required paperwork. Do you have a permission slip that's required by your school? Do they have to fill out any medication forms? Do they have to reserve a hotel room? Do parents who are driving cars have to fill out a background check form or have their car inspected? Any kind of paperwork that's required, that's something you're going to want to include. Meal information. Is your team providing a meal? Should kids bring a sack lunch? Should they bring money for concessions? What is the plan for food? Uniform guidelines. Do you have a team shirt that your kids are supposed to wear? Are you mandated to wear certain bottoms? Like on my team, for example, we follow our school dress code. If they can't wear whatever pants or skirt or shorts or whatever it is to school, they can't wear it to a competition. Clean clothes. I literally put in my agendas, your clothes that you wear to the event should be clean, so should you. Like, you would think by high school, like, they would know, hey, I should wear deodorant, I should probably brush my hair, I should probably brush my teeth, I probably should, put some effort into not smelling, but they don't. So remind them of this in your agenda. Transportation and attendance requirements. So if they're missing school, what do they have to do to be able to get permission to miss school? Like if they have to get their own schoolwork. So let's say you're traveling on a Friday or you go to a Friday, Saturday event, and your kids are missing school. Do they have to go to their teachers and get their homework? Are they just in excused absence and they don't have to do that work? What is it? Who's driving? Are you taking a school bus? Are parent drivers doing? Are you carpooling? Are you responsible for your own individual transportation? These are things that you as a coach should think about that will make you more effective at your job. Behavior expectations. This is a big one. If you have a team contract, like we talked about a little bit earlier with your expectations of how students, parents, and coaches are going to act, reminding them, while we're at events, you should probably review our team contract first and know what your behavior expectations are as a reminder before we go. Hotel or overnight information. What hotel are you staying at? What amenities do the hotel have? How many kids are in each room? How many beds are in each room? What to do if there is some kind of disagreement about who's sleeping where? Are parents sharing rooms with their kids? So I coach high school, so we put 4 students in a room, no adults with them, but we put adults in between the rooms, right? So we might have, a couple rooms of students with adults rooms on the outside. That's how we keep track. Now, if you coach IQ, your school might have a policy that says, there has to be, all students of the same gender and with an adult of the same gender. So knowing what your school or your organization's policy is on this is important. Pack and do not pack lists, with a disclaimer. Your team is not responsible for anything that you bring. If it is lost, damaged, or forgotten at the event, it is on you, right? So telling my students, like, no, don't bring your electronics, don't bring your video games, don't bring these things with you, leave them at home. But please remember socks and underwear. Those are important things to put in there. Venue details and policies, parking, arriving, what door to enter, all of those kind of things are important. Walking directions for people. What, if you're familiar with the venue, what does the seating look like? Do you have accommodations for people with disabilities? All of those things are important to put in there. Detailed departure and arrival times. The last page of my team's agenda and a lot of the other agendas that I've seen is a schedule of the events of the day. Then the last one is a student schedule. So between when it just says, you know, we're playing qualification matches from 9 a.m. to noon, what are students supposed to be doing in that time? So your broad overview of your schedule and then your detailed schedule. Did you have a question, Andrew? Okay, perfect. All right, so this is kind of sort of what one of my agendas looks like. I know it's not the clearest thing in the world to read, but just to give you like an overview, and I can share these documents out with you guys, so if you want to use this as a template, you are welcome to. So on the page on the left here, you'll kind of see it's a little bit of a welcome. It has contact information for the mentors, so that parents who have not yet put my cell phone number into their telephones, it's there for them to see. Your top one is going to be, again, those required documents. The next one is clothing guidelines. The next one is transportation. The next one is behavior. Then there's a section for meals. So it's all laid out on there exactly what is expected of them. Then this last page is our top-down view of the agenda of the day, right? When you have, so this was for any of my high school students who wanted to come to the VEX State Championship to volunteer. That's what this agenda is for. So it talks about where they should go, what time they should be there, what duties they would have during those times, okay? So this is posted on my team's website so that if any parent doesn't know where to get to it, I can just be like, hey, go to our team's website. That's where it is. And it's always accessible to everyone, and everyone knows where to go. So it's not like, you know, this is just a document I create. Everyone knows where it is. I post it in my team Slack. I email it out to parents, whatever I need to do to make sure everyone has access to them. But back in the day, I used to create PDFs of these and post them. And it was a pain, because if I had to change the address of something or change the arrival time or change the departure time, say I found out, oh no, one of the roads is closed and it's going to take us an extra half an hour to get there because it's Michigan and our state tree is a construction barrel. We have to be able to update these documents. So like I said, I used to create Microsoft Word documents, printed to PDF, posted up there. Now I do everything in Google Docs because it's a living document. So you can kind of see up there the things that are highlighted. That is because this is a living document and that's an update that I made. So anything that's highlighted in yellow for students and parents to say, hey, when I originally published this and sent it out, this is an update for you. So if any of those departure times would change or the description would change, they would look for highlights in that. So I might post in my team Slack to say, hey, there were some updates to the agenda, check them out. Not, hey, here are the updates to the agenda. You don't even have to look at the agenda because I just gave you the information. No, go to the agenda, get the information. So the next one can be really good or can be really bad. Depends on how you decide to enforce it. Going back to that, REC is a student-centered organization. You should be allowing the students to do the things that inspire them and to do the things that they want to do in order to learn. However, we also have to recognize that some things have to happen logistically in order for organizations to have sustainability, right? And sometimes that might mean doing something that's outside of our comfort zone. That might mean, even though I want to be the robot driver, there's only 2 students on the drive team, 3 coming up, but the other students on the drive team are not the drivers for that match. So communicating to your students that there are other learning opportunities for them and fun things for them to do when they're not doing that is something that I like to do. So I create student schedules. Now again, I know most of you guys are IQ coaches here, and I coach VRC, but this is still very applicable. But the level of planning that you're going to do for this method depends on your students and their abilities and how many students you have and what your team's resources are. So, determining a shift rotation. This requires you as a coach to kind of think about how time passes an event differently. We as a society focus on time. At an event, everything revolves around matches, the number of matches. So for my team, it's based on the number of matches. So your scouting shift, your driver shift, your pitch shift, your whatever shift is based on a rotation of matches. You can choose 5 matches, 10 matches, 15 matches, 20 matches, whatever you want that to be, and create your schedule based on that. The idea is, even though, you know, in the morning, let's face it, we as coaches and event partners expect match turnaround time to be a little bit longer in the morning than it is in the afternoon, until everyone gets the hang of coming to the field, setting up their robot, resetting the field, those kind of things. So if you have a morning shift, you're going to spend a little bit more time than if you have an afternoon shift, but we're all given the same amount of responsibility to watch matches and contribute. Okay? Scheduling free time. I know scheduled free time sounds like an oxymoron, because free time means you get to do what you want. But for this, it is you are guaranteed to have free time. Because we all know things get busy. You forget that, you know, Johnny hasn't had a break from sitting in the stands watching matches or whatever. So scheduling free time allows that to happen. Making this available to students, parents, and coaches. Having this be a living public document to the members of your team is important for a couple of reasons. Number one, I include everyone's schedule on one piece of paper. That allows community responsibility. That means Jared knows what Andrew is supposed to be doing right now, and they can hold each other responsible. But that also means that they know what each other's schedule is, so they can coordinate fun activities. To be like, hey, we both have our free time starting at match 10. Do you want to go walk around the pits and collect stickers together? Because we know that we both have free time at the same time. So these are just some of the jobs that you can consider. These are some of the suggestions that I received from feedback in the community. Drive team. Whose responsibility is it to drive for a certain match? Whether you have the same drive team for every single match or you're rotating students out, having a schedule will help them know whose turn it is and when. Pit crew. Maybe if you're not on the drive team, you're in the pit crew. You're responsible for, you know, maintenance on the robot. You're responsible for keeping your pit clean. You're responsible for, you know, making sure all the pins are not all over the floor everywhere. You're responsible for talking to other teams and parents when they come around and ask you questions. Scouting. Are you watching matches and collecting data to decide how you're going to play matches later down the tournament? So you know when you're matched up with somebody whether you have complementary capabilities and doing some kind of strategy with them. And then photography and documentation. Is someone taking notes in the engineering notebook throughout the event? Is someone taking pictures for your team? So these are just ideas of jobs that you can give students, because when you're delegating a job to them, it creates an opportunity for learning and it creates an opportunity for responsibility for them. They're guaranteed to have something to do. They're guaranteed to have something to learn. The more conducive you can make a learning environment for a student, the more opportunities for learning they will have. So this is kind of an example of what one of my schedules looks like for my students. Depending on the thing, so at our state championship, you might have a lot more matches. So at the top, I always put the name of the event, whatever your event that you're going to is, and the date, because I've created literally one of these for every event my team has come to for, you know, the better part of a decade and a half. So I like to put a fun or funny or inspirational quote across the top. My students always look forward to seeing what quote I'm going to come up with for the day. So this one was, our days are happier when we give people a piece of our heart rather than a piece of our mind. So just reminding my students that whole respectfulness, right? So across the side, you'll see everybody's name. Across the top, you'll see the match schedule for turnaround, and then you'll see what their duties are. So you might have students on the drive team, you might have team scouting, you might have them taking photos. You might have them, you know, doing lots and lots of other things. And then if there's nothing there, that's free time for them. And then the idea is at the end of the event, what is their responsibility? Outside of their regular team duties, what is the responsibility? Are they in charge of helping pack things up in the pit? Are they in charge of helping clean up our team stands? Do they have to help carry our scouting material? My students are incredibly enthusiastic about scouting. We bring like a table and a printer, and they do paper scouting sheets, collect past papers out, collect them, input data. So like it's a whole thing. Like we have to have a trailer to haul our stuff, right? But all of those things are important to those students, so I make them important to me, and we include them on here. Okay, that's kind of what I have. Mr. Dolan.
All right, well, hey, thank you, Brandy. That was, as you guys can tell, we're looking at a very seasoned VEX robotics coach here, first robotics coach. The details and the level you put things at is pretty amazing, I think. Yeah, I've never seen some of the documents that you shared with, so that was great stuff. Now, I do want to say this, though. If you're a brand new coach getting into this stuff, you're drinking from the fire hose.
That's true.
I mean, it's just so much information trying to figure out the game and where do you buy stuff and how do you manage the team and all these details. And the only advice I give is very simple. Just do it, right? And, you know, once you get into it, you'll really start to understand things like the scouting and all of these other pieces and the, you know, how do you keep the kids engaged. But as your very first season, the only advice I have is, you know, show up for the tournament.
Yeah.
You know, if you can get your team to the tournament, that will inspire them to do so much more. They'll see what the other teams are doing. They'll be really incentivized to say, well, what can we do next? So that very first tournament, if you get to it early in the season, is probably the biggest motivator and educator for the team, for the coach, for everybody. Just get there.
I agree. And then you'll also have parents who get very excited, and they'll say, what can I do to help? And maybe you as the coach, you delegate some of these documents and these kind of things to a parent that's on your team too. So they're not a requirement to make a new team work. They're just a way for coaches either who are just starting out or maybe looking to take their team to the next level to have a little bit more confidence in knowledge in what to expect when you go to an event.
Right on. So next up, we're going to take a short pause, and then we'll introduce some new people coming up here for another segment. So thank you, Brandy. Really appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks, Andrew.